You and your investigators at GAI have dug up the names, the money, and the methods, all exposed for the first time. You and your team have shared this face-to-face with the president and his senior staff.
And America's challenges didn't happen by accident, and they didn't appear overnight. In a recent episode of Alan Jackson Now, Pastor Alan Jackson sits down with Peter Schweizer, author of The Invisible Coup, to examine a troubling claim that immigration has been weaponized, not just by foreign powers, but with the cooperation of American elites. This conversation pulls back the curtain on the money, the methods, and the alliances shaping our nation behind the scenes. Issues serious enough that Schweizer personally briefed senior U.S. leadership. But this isn't just a warning. Pastor Allen also reminds us of something many overlook. God is still moving. Biblical values are re-entering the public square, and renewal is possible if we have the clarity to see and the courage to respond. Since 2011, the Chinese Communist Party has openly encouraged members of its elite to give birth inside the United States. This wasn't hidden. It was promoted in the People's Daily, the CCP's official newspaper. An entire industry now exists to arrange these births.
Our government has no idea how many people do this every year because they don't keep track of these statistics. And when you're born in the United States, you're given a birth certificate, but it doesn't say what the nationality of your parents are. So the federal government in Washington has literally no idea how many people are doing this. China does. The Chinese Communist Party since 2011 has been encouraging members of the Chinese elite to do this.
What the Chinese Communist Party has done is quietly set up something most Americans have never even heard of, an industrial-scale exploitation of birthright citizenship. Let that sink in for a moment. The U.S. government doesn't even know how many times this happens every year because we don't track it.
They ran articles in the People's Daily, which is their major newspaper. There's a large industry that will arrange these things for you. And the Chinese government has actually studied this and has concluded that based on their analysis, every year for the past 13 years, roughly 100,000 Chinese babies have been born in the United States. They get U.S. citizenship, and then they are immediately taken back to China, where they are raised in the Chinese Communist Party system.
Those children automatically receive U.S. citizenship, and then they are taken straight back to China, where they are raised inside the Chinese Communist Party system. So why should Americans care? Because these children are U.S. citizens. When they turn 18, they can vote in American elections. They can donate to political campaigns legally. They can apply for government jobs. This isn't accidental. This isn't humanitarian. This is long-term strategic planning. And here's the key warning. That first generation begins turning 18 very soon. The wave starts cresting in 2028. This isn't speculation. It's a national security issue, and it's one we're dangerously unprepared for.
So why should we care? Well, they're U.S. citizens, which means when they turn 18, they're going to be able to vote in our elections. They're going to be able to donate to political campaigns legally. They're going to be able to apply for government jobs. This is a massive national security threat. It's a manipulation of birthright citizenship, and we need to be prepared for it because this wave is going to start cresting just a couple of years from now when that first generation starts turning 18 years old.
Meantime, how many of these trained communists do you think are already here or maybe just on their way?
It's a great question. I think the big wave is going to start arriving in 2028. That's when they start turning 18. And then the crest of the wave is going to continue. This is an enormous problem. It represents an effort to engineer the effective invasion of the United States, because if we're going to have 1 million Chinese communists who are quote-unquote U.S. citizens because they just happen to have been born here.
And this is why Peter Schweizer makes the argument that the Supreme Court must revisit birthright citizenship.
So this is an enormous problem. I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court is going to realize what's going on, that this manipulation is occurring, and that they are going to actually do something about it and say, no, this is a misinterpretation of what the 14th Amendment actually means.
The current interpretation was never designed for a world where hostile foreign governments could weaponize our laws against us. Yet that's exactly what's happening. When a foreign adversary can systematically insert future voters, donors, and government applicants into the American system, we are no longer talking about immigration policy. We're talking about national sovereignty. If this issue remains untouched, there is nothing to stop a foreign enemy from continuing and expanding this practice on an even larger scale. That's not compassion. That's vulnerability. A nation that refuses to secure its legal foundations invites exploitation. And history shows us that invasions don't always come with tanks and troops. Sometimes they arrive quietly through paperwork, policies, and time. The warning here is simple. Laws written for a different era cannot protect us in the one we're living in now. If we fail to address this, the consequences won't be theoretical. They will be measurable, at the ballot box, inside our institutions, and within our national security apparatus. This isn't fear, this is foresight, and the time to confront it is now, not after the wave has already broken. What we've examined today isn't speculation or political theater. It's a warning rooted in documented strategy and real-world consequences. When laws meant to protect freedom go unexamined, they can be exploited. And when ideology replaces discernment, nations become vulnerable from within. That's why clarity matters. That's why truth matters. Pastor Alan Jackson and his guests continue to bring thoughtful, courageous insight into these critical issues. Be sure to visit and subscribe to Alan Jackson Now on YouTube for in-depth conversations that challenge the narrative and encourage biblical clarity in uncertain times. As believers, we're called to be watchful, not fearful, grounded in wisdom, anchored in Scripture, and awake to the times in which we live. For more videos that separates faith from indoctrination, truth from narrative, and discernment from distraction, stay tuned right here on the Gospel Vault. Explore our Faith versus Indoctrination playlist and join us as we examine today's headlines through a biblical lens, with courage, clarity, and conviction. The conversation doesn't end here. It's just getting started.